Again, real quick, if you wish to speak tonight and you haven't signed the speakers list, it's on the table in the hallway. Please feel free to sign up. On behalf of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, I would like to welcome you here tonight to the public scoping meeting for the Constitution Pipeline Project. I am Kara Harris, and I'm an environmental scientist in FERC's Office of Energy Projects. Charlie Brown, the FERC's environmental project manager for the Constitution Pipeline Project, is recovering from surgery and is unable to attend. Here with me tonight from FERC is Kevin Bowman, to my left, the deputy project manager for the project. Tamara Young-Allen with FERC's Office of External Affairs is also here in the back. Shahid Anise with OEP. Pamela Romano with FERC's Office of Division Pipeline Certificates is also in attendance in the back. We have with us Doug Mooney-Hand to my right and Lavinia DeSanto in the back from Cardinal Insurance, FERC's environmental third-party consultants, who will assist us with the development of the environmental document. Before we get started, please turn off or silence your cell phones. Thank you. We are here tonight to provide some information on the federal process in relation to the proposed Constitution Pipeline Project and to hear your comments and concerns. Fundamentally, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide each of you with an opportunity to give us your comments and to tell us what additional environmental issues you think we should address in our analysis of the proposed project. We've already received numerous comments concerning the project, including some suggestions for additional alternatives. Based on comments already received, FERC has requested that Constitution analyze at least two major alternative routes. We included affected landowners for each of these alternatives on our mailing list for the notice of intent, which requested comments and announced tonight's meeting. Your input on these alternatives is one of the things we are hoping to hear tonight. The FERC staff's environmental analysis will result in the production of an environmental impact statement, or EIS. The FERC is the lead federal agency responsible for the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, review of the Constitution Pipeline Project, and the lead agency for the preparation of the EIS. NEPA requires FERC to analyze the environmental impacts, consider alternatives, and provide appropriate mitigation measures on proposed projects. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, U.S. Department of Transportation, and New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets are currently cooperating agencies. Additional federal, state, and local agencies with special expertise are welcome to cooperate as well. I'd like to take a few moments to further explain the purpose of tonight's public meeting. I'd like to clarify that the proposed project is not conceived by and is not promoted by the FERC or the cooperating agencies. FERC reviews applications for the authority to build and operate interstate natural gas pipelines, and Constitution Pipeline is in the process of preparing an application to submit to FERC. Once the application is submitted, our obligation is to review that application and prepare an analysis of the environmental impacts. I'd like to point out that FERC does not regulate local natural gas distribution pipelines or natural gas production facilities. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is responsible for the regulation and oversight of local natural gas production facilities. The New York State Public Service Commission is responsible for the regulation and oversight of natural gas pipeline distribution facilities. In Pennsylvania, these facilities are overseen by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Although we recognize that you may have concerns regarding the production and local distribution of natural gas in Pennsylvania and New York State, FERC has no regulatory authority over these activities, and comments regarding the siting and permitting are best directed to the agencies I just mentioned. Tonight's meeting is not a public hearing. We are not here to debate the proposal or to make any determinations on its fate. We are here to listen to your comments so that we can consider them in our analysis. Pipeline proposals sometimes encounter objections. Some are general in nature, and some objections are based on potential environmental and safety impacts. Both categories are important to FERC, but they are addressed in different ways. General objections to the project would be considered during the Commission's Public Convenience and Necessity Review, whereas environmental and safety impacts are addressed by the FERC environmental staff in our EIS. Our Notice of Intent, or NOI, issued on September 7th, we requested your comments and assigned a deadline of October 9th. However, the end of the scoping period is not the end of the public involvement. We will take comments throughout our review of the project, but for us to adequately address your concerns and analyze them and research the issues, we ask that you try to get those to us as soon as possible. A speakers list is located at a table in the hallway, and we will use that list to identify individuals wishing to provide verbal comments tonight on the project. The order for speakers is as follows. Elected officials will speak first, impacted landowners second, and anyone else who wishes to speak third. In addition to verbal comments provided tonight, we will also accept your written comments. If you have comments but do not wish to speak tonight, you may provide written comments on the comment forms at the back table. You may drop those off with us or mail them in at a later date. Be sure to include the project docket number PF12-9. The Constitution Pipeline project is currently in our pre-filing process. That is, an application has not been filed at FERC. We consider the pre-filing process to be, among other things, an extension of our scoping process. The scoping process is a learning process. It is where we educate ourselves about the project and the potential issues. During the scoping process, we are gathering information. The four general sources that we are using right now are information provided by the applicant, input from other federal, state, and local agencies, our own field work and research of different issues, and the information provided by the public. Once we gather the information developed during the scoping process and the application is formally filed by the applicant, we will analyze it and we will prepare a draft environmental impact statement or a draft EIS that will be distributed for comments. There are two general ways that you can get a copy of the draft EIS. First of all, if you receive the notice of intent that we sent out, you are already on our mailing list and will receive a copy of the draft EIS. Secondly, you can fill out the mailing list form at the back table. Please print your name and address and we will add you to the mailing list. If you do not do one of these two things, we won't be able to send you a copy of the draft EIS. The mailed version of the draft will be a CD. If you prefer to have a hard copy mailed to you, please indicate that choice on the return mailer included in the NOI. After the draft EIS is issued, there will be a 45-day public comment period. During that period, we will hold another public meeting similar in format to this one. We will probably come back here to the same facility if it is available and ask you to comment on the information provided in the draft EIS. At the end of the 45-day public comment period, we will begin organizing all the information gathered to date and prepare the final EIS. Once we have issued the final EIS, it is forwarded to our commissioners. The EIS is not a decision-making document. Our 5 commissioners at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission will use that document as well as other information to make a determination on whether or not to grant authorization for this project. Next, we will have Cindy Ivey from Constitution give a short presentation on the proposed project.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Great. Good evening. As Kara said, my name is Cindy Ivey. I'm the manager of public outreach for the Constitution Pipeline Company, which is a joint venture between 2 natural gas companies, Williams and Cabot Oil and Gas. In addition to being the majority owner of the pipeline, Williams would be responsible for permitting, constructing, and operating the Constitution Pipeline. The proposed 121-mile, 30-inch pipeline is being designed with the capacity to transport 650,000 decatherms of natural gas per day from the production area in northeastern Pennsylvania to well-developed, large domestic markets in New England and New York City. The capacity that would be transported in this pipeline is the equivalent to serving the energy needs of approximately 3 million homes per day. The proposed primary route would start adjacent to an existing compressor station in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania, and extend approximately 121 miles across parts of Broome, Shenango, Delaware, and Schoharie counties in New York, and ending at an existing compressor station in Schoharie County, New York. The company is currently examining a 600-foot wide study corridor and has asked for survey permission from landowners along this primary route. The 600-foot wide survey corridor allows the company flexibility to make informed decisions regarding the potential location of the proposed facilities. The company is also studying more than 15 route alternatives and based on input from stakeholders and agencies has adopted alternatives A, B, L, and Q into its primary route. 5 open houses for the primary route, 1 for each county, were held in July. Along with the primary route and several variations, the company is also studying an 80-plus mile major route alternative referred to as alternate Route M, which would route the pipeline closer to Interstate 88. The alternative was developed in response to numerous comments from stakeholders. The first 45 miles of this alternate would be the same as the primary route and would potentially affect a different set of landowners who are located closer to Interstate 88 in Shenango, Otsego, Delaware, and Schoharie counties. This alternate would be approximately 127 miles and would terminate at the same location in Schoharie County as the primary route. 2 open houses for alternate Route M were held in the area on September 12th and 13th. In addition to the 121 miles of pipeline, the Constitution Project proposal also includes a new 32,000 horsepower compressor facility that would be located in Schoharie County, New York, 2 receipt metering stations in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, and 2 delivery metering stations in Schoharie County, New York. Williams proposes to meet or exceed all federal regulations established by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration for construction and operation of this project. We are developing an integrity management plan that focuses on prevention first and foremost, followed by detection and mitigation. Since 2002, Williams has invested more than $1 billion in our existing pipelines on maintenance and integrity-related enhancements since 2002. The pipeline, compressor station, and meter stations are being designed with safety and security measures. A local full-time staff of highly trained individuals would operate, monitor, and maintain the pipeline and its facilities. In addition, the pipeline would be remotely monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from Williams Gas Control Central in Houston. Constitution entered the pre-filing process in April of 2012 and filed first drafts of Resource Report 1, which covers the scope of the project, and Resource Report 10, which gives an overview of the company's alternatives analysis in May of 2012. We plan to file additional drafts of all required resource reports, that's 1 through 12, in November, followed by the filing of our formal 7C application in early 2013. Should the project receive approval, the company is targeting a March 31st, 2015 in-service date. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. If time allows, after the formal meeting is adjourned, representatives from Constitution will be available with project maps to answer your questions about the project. Since we have so many people in attendance tonight and signed up to speak, I'm going to go ahead and set the ground rules early. This meeting is being recorded by a transcription service, so all your comments will be transcribed and placed into the public record. For the benefit of all in attendance and for accuracy of the transcript, when your name is called, please step up to the podium and clearly state your name and affiliation, if any. You might spell your name for the court reporter if misspelling is likely. Also, please speak directly into the microphone so that you can be clearly heard by the reporter, the panel, and the audience. And just to point out, there are recording devices on the podium, so you should speak towards us so that you are clearly recorded for the transcriber. Tonight's meeting is scheduled to end at 10 o'clock. We have about 40 people signed up to speak. That gives each person approximately 4 minutes to provide comments. We do not want to limit anyone's comments, but to get through all of the speakers, we will have to set a time frame. Please keep in mind that applause will also reduce the time we have for speakers. If you have detailed comments, we ask that you would summarize the comments at the podium tonight and then give us the full written comments at the table where you came in. Also, if you are a speaker and you feel that your comments were previously expressed, you can simply state your name and your endorsement of those previous comments. I also want to make sure that we conduct this meeting in a professional decorum. We're here to hear from each of you and hear your comments on the project. Respect each speaker as they provide their comments, whether you agree with them or not. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we're going to start with the public officials first. Good. Randy Williams with the Town of Windsor. Please come forward.
Good evening. Randy Williams, Town of Windsor Supervisor. I'm here to show support for the Constitution Pipeline project here tonight. The one item, though, that I wish that you could find to incorporate in your final documents is a road use agreement. It was nice to hear Cindy talk about the following the federal regulations, but we just finished a 9.4 mile project with Williams in the town of Windsor, along with a compressor station, and we do have a road use agreement in place with Williams for that project. So I would ask that we have a similar agreement in place for the Constitution Pipeline. And again, I believe that the natural gas is going to be a way of the future. Certainly in this area, we already see the benefits in Windsor with the assessment and the taxes that the pipelines are paying. And we are working on running natural gas throughout the village of Windsor, which will certainly be a positive for our community. So again, I am here to support the project. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Mr. Isaiah Sutton with Shenango County.
Good evening. My name is Isaiah Sutton. I'm the Director of Environmental Health for Shenango County. I've been asked by the Village of Afton to come tonight to make the Commission aware that the pipeline runs, by my calculation, about 1,000 feet at mile point 36 and 37 of the village's primary water source. The Village of Afton is serviced by a series of spring basins, 7 of them, that are located about 4.5 miles from here, south on Route 41. They're called Bologna Springs, delineated on most maps. That water source is a series of fairly shallow catchments that are specifically sensitive to surface activity, changes in drainage, I know blasting that may be involved. I'm not sure all that's involved in putting the pipeline, but definitely of concern. Additionally, if the pipeline is rerouted along Route 88, the village has service pipeline that serves from those springs that is in excess of 107 years old. That pipeline is hard to work on, so if changes need to be made, that pipe needs to be removed. Extensive work could need to be done in that area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move to directly impacted landowners. We'll start with Mr. Chris Erickson. Sorry, this is Chris Erickson.
Hi, my name is Christine Eckerson, E-C-K-E-R-S-O-N. I live at 671 Prosser Hollow Road in Davenport, New York. I understand that you want to focus on environmental issues, so I guess I'll just go right past the fact that if you go through the property as the alternate end is originally proposed, that it would financially cripple us, cause us to abandon our ideas which we were beginning for a nonprofit agency and which we were looking forward to doing full time, because that renewable micro enterprises we were going to use on our property would be wiped clean when they clear the property or the portion of the property for the pipeline. So once that's disturbed, all of that and everything we've looked forward to for 50 some odd years is going to go away. But in any case, another thing is that one of our neighbors who's lived in the area all the time says that he has found throughout the years Indian artifacts on the mountain, and I'm not sure how important that's going to be to you either. Do want to let you know, though, that the property that I live on is very wet, is very shallow, has jutting large rocks and a number of springs on the property. One spring needs to be accessible to the neighbors of the property for drinking water. We also have all around our property federal wetlands that are designated, and I'm not sure if any are designated on my property. All of this is hodgepodge together, and a lot of things I found this morning because we didn't have a lot of time to get this together, and you're only allowing us until October 9th. More time would be better. I don't even understand the process of how they're working with compensating us one time versus the way I was going to use the land over the years versus eminent domain, and we haven't had a chance to even find any information. So everything's being very rushed for us. But our ground is very spongy. Some areas, when you use a light vehicle, will cause water to spring up and run. Then in those tire tracks, it tends to then run straight all the topsoil down to bedrock, and then we have runoff from there. We have water that comes in from all three sides, the top of the hill, and two sides as we go downhill from our neighbors, all come onto our property and seem to form a swamp at the bottom of the property. Every time we use, like I said, our utility vehicle, it does create streams and runoff, and even when we walk. So most of the time we do walk. We're afraid if the pipeline starts construction there, that it will disturb the springs, especially with the blasting, and everything will change. The deforestation of the property will change the land forever. We believe that the springs, the outcroppings, the bushes, the trees, everything keeps the topsoil in place and provides area for all the wildlife that is there. We are afraid that this property is so delicate an ecosystem that if anything is disturbed, that we may lose the species that have been on the property. We have heard of large cat species on the property. We have personally seen several different types of woodpeckers, hawks. We can hear owls at night. We have seen many species of reptiles, birds, insects, mammals, and some of these we're not professionals, but maybe endangered species, we don't know. This year was very dry, and we were very, very packed with a lot of wild animals. We feel they come there because there's still water, even though there's not water elsewhere. The leaves have fallen off of some of the trees in the area this summer due to the dry weather, yet our area was still wet. We are worried that this habitat is in danger. We don't understand why the pipeline was routed. It kind of hooks up to our property where it is steep, craggy, all of these things. And everything is very critically placed and holds everything in place. And we are very afraid that this environmentally critical piece of land is going to be destroyed. Keeping it intact allows the usage of the springs. It allows the people to come onto our property to use the springs also. It supports all the wildlife. And I'm sure there must be a more stable area that you can find that isn't as steep, wet, or supportive of these animals. That would be easier to place the pipeline.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Arthur Wagner.
Good evening. Arthur Wagner, landowner, 163 Cliff Road, Windsor, New York. I want to endorse prior comments that I had sent to FERC through the internet, and I will also be submitting additional comments, and I won't get into specifics on the environmental impact. But there are 4 landowners with approximately 1,000 contiguous acres that were being affected by alternate B, which was the initial plan. We've been asked to comment on other alternates. Excuse me, it was alternate A. Alternate B was the first time I saw the maps for this evening, so it is difficult to make comments and suggestions on other alternates. But we will be working together for landowners with those acres from the original plan to ensure that the pipeline moves to another area. I'm also recommending that other landowners get together to work as a group to ensure that they had a satisfactory resolution for the pipeline. We also work with the Windsor Coalition, Jim Worden, and I would recommend that FERC and Constitution work with the Windsor Coalition to ensure that the issues with the pipeline are resolved satisfactorily for as many landowners as possible. And the Windsor Coalition is working for landowners that want the pipeline and landowners that don't want the pipeline. They know the area and they're a wealth of knowledge. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Whitbeck.
My name is Rudy Whitbeck, R-U-D-Y, W-H-I-T-B-E-C-K. I live Delaware County, and I'm referred to alternate Plan M. We've lived on our property for 40 years, and I'm a little ill-prepared for this because we haven't had a lot of time. That map shows the corridor comes in right up, including the road in front of our house, and then it makes a 90-degree turn just past our house. The corridor includes our driveway, our spring, and I suppose I'd like to know if a study can be done is how you can legally violate, this is a violation of my 14th Amendment, by right to life, liberty, and property. Now, when you look at where the pipeline is proposed to go, straight up the hill, I don't see any way they can do it without blasting and get into the rock. Because I've had bulldozers up, I haven't personally, there's been bulldozers up there trying to clear trees to do timbering and that, and they just can't move the boulders. I'd like to have you look into Title 18 on the Code of CFR 801.0, that's A and B. And this deals with the Susquehanna River Basin. Now, I know that you're talking about environmental impact. Now, this has to come across the Allegheny Creek, even to get to where it is on my property. There's got to be runoffs. I don't know what respect this would have as far as the Susquehanna River Basin. And this will definitely have an effect on the water table and the runoff and water dealing with that. I'd like to see in the plan on this 801.5, I'd like to see in the plan where the pipeline is installed. Because according to the information on this CFR, everything has to be planned according to the River Basin Authority. I do have more comments and things that I'm going to submit at a later date, but this is all that I have time for this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Stack.
My name is Ann Stack, A-N-E-S-T-C-K. I am a citizen of the United States of America, and I am also a landowner on Coe Hill Road. And I'm really here speaking in both capacities. I feel that what's going on is an absolute utter violation of all of our rights as citizens, and more specifically, as a landowner. 8 years ago, we bought property on Coe Hill Road with the dream and the intention of building a retirement home there. In April, we've been living for the past 16 years in Reno, Nevada. In April, we shipped our belongings east so that we could come here in August and begin the building process. We've already scoped out where it's going. We had a septic survey done last fall, and then in May, we got a letter from the unconstitutional pipeline people. So our belongings are in storage. We're living here in a neighbor's home, happens to be my brother. He took us in, and we can no longer proceed with our plans, our dream. The pipeline, the original one, not M, the first one that we're aware of, goes bullseye through where the septic tank field survey was done. It's also where basically our only access to the property in terms of development, because we have very limited road access. So that's my personal dilemma, if you will. But on such a much larger scale, I am so concerned with all of the environmental impacts. If you look at the map and you see where this Constitution pipeline is proposed to go, dead through an incredibly beautiful, pristine area of the Catskills, it's an absolute violation not only of the human rights, but of the rights of all species that have lived here. So there's many things that I will address in writing, my concerns, and that I'd like scoping to take into play. But one that I would like to address specifically is property values. Now, our property will be rendered worthless in terms of monetary, for us, if this goes through. They said in their frequently asked questions, a little summary, they address property values, and they quote, in 2001, a national case study revealed no significant impact on property values or property sales. What absolute and utter nonsense. Now maybe that was true in 2001, but I believe horizontal fracking, certainly not in Pennsylvania or this region, had been underway back then. And so I think that is absolute of vital importance to the scoping investigation. What impact does it have? I've heard stories about, I think it's a national insurance company who will insure lands. I've heard stories about, and these are stories as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if they're validated yet, but how Wells Fargo insures pipeline people but won't insure homeowners, not sure, can give mortgages to homeowners who want to build where there's a pipeline. I mean, there's just so many environmental disasters. So I'll wrap it up with that, and just with a plea as human beings that you think about the impact on the humans who have lived in this area and the animals, the birds. And you know, we have such a glut of natural gas right now. Look at the destruction in Pennsylvania. Look at those two pictures back there. Just go take a look at them. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. And it's just the tip of the iceberg of what they do to the aquifers, to the homes. So thank you for listening. And I pray that you will really hear what the people are asking, to not allow the Constitution pipeline anywhere.
Bob Golder.
Good evening. Bob Gellner, 2028 White Hill Road, Davenport. One thing I would say that touches on what that young lady said, As far as you for environmental impact, it's 121 miles through the forest, 150-foot wide swath. I mean, what more needs to be said? The whole thing is an environmental impact, the entire length of it. Of course, it's moving fracking gas, and thanks to natural gas and oil, major contributors to global warming, they're basically obsolete through global warming. We won't need gas anymore, so we certainly don't need another gas line. And we all know where it's going to wind up. We know it's going to China. We gave them the jobs, and now we're going to give them the fuel to keep the jobs. And again, this is more fracking, but that's, if you're doing the pipeline, you're aiding and abetting the fracking business. And I believe it was President Bush and Vice President Cheney, who happens to be one of the big wigs for Halliburton, still is, removed the gas and oil companies from clean air and water. I can't imagine why. They had to be removed from the coverage of the Clean Air and Water Act so you can do fracking and run fracking gas and destroy our properties out of pure greed. That's it. Thank you.
Barbara Loeffler.
Hi, Barbara Loeffler, 1704 Prosser Hollow Road, town of Davenport. I'm a major landowner in that region. I have 140 acres that will be split asunder right down the middle. The most usable part of my land will be destroyed from heavy equipment going in. There'll be blasting, which will impact my neighbors. They're very concerned about their water, and they ask me what will happen. I said, I don't know what will happen. I just know that trucks will have to go up there. I also have an area very close to the line where my husband's ashes are interred. A gazebo sits on top of it, and he spent 40 years of his life in heavy construction, and I can't envision heavy equipment driving over his final resting place. This is the place of his dreams, and he didn't live to come here. He died just months before we were going to retire up here after 30 years of working in the cold and everything else. And he told me, we don't own the land. Our job is to take care of the land for the next people that come along. And if our land is destroyed by this is a desecration across the land that is not necessary for any of us to live. There's nobody in this room wrote a letter and said, we're desperate for natural gas. And the way it's presented to us, it's passing through. Just coming from Pennsylvania. I also have property in Pennsylvania, and I'm very familiar with some of the issues that go on there. I don't think there's a person in here that wants to go live in Dimmock, Pennsylvania. Is there somebody here who wants to go live in Dimmock, Pennsylvania? I have talked to people who used to live in Dimmock, and they said they lived in a trailer, and they could no longer live there anymore because the price, because of the pipeline and all the workers that were coming in from elsewhere, and not employing any of their people, they had to move because they couldn't pay the new rent. So I just want to get back to the environmental. Our 140 acres have always been having the hay cut by neighbors and us too. It had an economic impact on me this year because I was going to reintroduce beef cattle. I went to a meeting at Otsego, and the demand in the city areas for grass-fed beef, which we can supply easily, was very high and could be very profitable to bring farming back into this area. I had to cancel my order for the beef cattle because I'm not going to make an investment in fencing that's going to be ripped out of my prime pasture area. So when they say that it's only going to be a good impact, I don't see a good impact. I see a bad impact. I had a friend that wanted to come up and retire up here. When she saw all the things that I had spread on my table, she said, you know what, I don't think I want to do this. I'm not going to invest in any land up here. This is kind of scary. So the economic impact is already, it's not snowballing, but it's there. I know somebody that said, no, I'm not going to go buy a new washing machine. Maybe I'm selling my house and I'm leaving. So all these little things are going on in people's lives. It has, from the day that letter came, I never swooned, even when they told me I had cancer. I didn't swoon. But when I saw that map with my property split down the middle, after all the work that my husband put into it, I did. I had to sit down. I couldn't stand up anymore. So I just hope you'll take that into consideration. I have 30 years of my life. I drove a school bus for 30 years so that I could keep this place. And I made a decision after my husband passed that I would come up here and take care of this land. And I intend to continue taking care of this land.
Giuseppe Rudavi.
Hi, my name is Giuseppe Fululi, Giuseppe-Fuduli. I'm a landowner on Cohill Road, Nonianto, and I'm an immigrant that came to this country 30 years ago. I'm a proud American citizen now, and I work for the dream of working hard for me and my family, my kids. And we had decided 8 years ago to buy property up here to build a dream home and a place that the kids can be in touch with nature and be able to go out and spend time in the woods and breathe some fresh air, because we don't have that on Long Island, where I live now. We were able to put a house in, and we spent all our sacrifices and all our money that for our future. We put into that home, into this property. And when I received that letter, my heart just stopped. I don't know why this needs to be done. To me, it seems like there's plenty of gas around and plenty of supply. The markets show it, that there is a lot more supply than there is demand. This is totally unnecessary. The only thing it's doing is opening up the area to fracking and to environmental impact to the nature that we all love and that we live up here for. Me and my wife's dream would be one day to be able to retire here. That's why we did this. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I see my sacrifices that they're going down the drain. As a matter of fact, this morning I had an appraisal done on my house because I was in the middle of refinancing. And I happened to have the same appraiser that came 7 years ago when I got my first mortgage on the house. And the value of my house went down. And I said, how can it be that this is so much? Well, there is a potential of the pipeline coming around, so we have to take that in consideration when we figure out who we want to give money to, and take that in consideration of the value of the house that we're doing.
How much has it gone down so far?
Well, from 7 years ago, my house has gone down like $100,000 in value. And I don't know where it's going to go. The pipeline is splitting my property right in half. I own 130 acres up here with the house on it, and it's going through wetlands, it's going through a stream. There is plenty of wildlife that we're concerned that we love to keep. And also I'm concerned about the health of my family, which is what is my right to protect. Thank you.
Bob Stack.
My name is Bob Stack, S-D-A-C-K, and I live on Cohill Road, 2536 Cohill, temporarily. And you already heard from my wife, Ann. She and I share the same opinions and concerns about the destruction of our land. And as she said, we had planned to build a home, a retirement home, and over the last few months, this has come in the way. There are a few other items I'd like to bring up in addition to what she said. One is that in some of the literature that I've read, it talks about this pipeline going through quote-unquote existing corridors as much as possible. It occurred to me that when this pipeline, or if this pipeline goes in, that any new area, any new land that pipeline goes through suddenly becomes, quote, an existing corridor. So that means then that any subsequent interstate developments, a power line, another gas line, it's going to be all the more easy to bring that in because, again, we have an existing corridor. The bedrock has already been blasted out, the land has already been tortured, and so property owners affected by this pipeline are not off the hook just if the one pipeline goes through. They're going to be under the gun for forever, basically. The second item I want to bring up is that when FERC evaluates these projects, that they go beyond just simple dollars and cents engineering studies, how much the land costs on the market currently, how much it's worth, and how much versus how much the pipeline company stands to make, but also to look at something environmentally different, or take a different view of the environment, and look at what value is there to the people who live on this land, who love it, and appreciate its beauty and its aesthetic qualities. These are things that cannot be quantified by engineering studies in dollars and cents. These are something that can only be held in the hearts of the people who live there. And this is the calculus that these people, the people who live here, use. They're not interested in the few thousands of dollars they might get from an easement settlement. And they're interested in the beauty of the land and protecting that land and protecting the beauty. That's why we came up here to live, and that's why we will continue to stay and fight for this land. Thank you.
Bill Hallworth.
My name is Bill Hulbert, H-U-L-B-E-R-T. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My family and I live in East Meredith, New York, and our property has been identified as being included in the pipeline's primary route. We oppose the construction of this pipeline as proposed by the Constitution Pipeline Company. If in fact it is in the national interest to convey natural gas to New York City and elsewhere in the Northeast, this should be done with minimal disruption to the lives and property of New York citizens. Disturbing 737 and 1,530 acres of land for pipeline operation and construction, respectively, is simply not reasonable. FERC's mailing of September 7, 2012 specifies topics that will be addressed in the draft environmental impact study and currently identified environmental issues. I would like to see the EIS address the following aspects of impacts. 1. For all possible alternatives, it's important to address impacts of blasting to homes and other structures, including but not limited to private wells and septic systems. Analysis should include details on the number and intensity of blasting operations needed to construct the pipeline, minimal setback distances to avoid damage to homes and property structures, and a cumulative assessment of the potential damages due to blasting incurred by the alternative pipeline routes under consideration. 2. For all possible alternatives, an analysis of the impacts of pipeline construction and operation on the property values of land parcels of different size, land use, and demographics should be conducted. This analysis would speak to the general heading of socioeconomics which is identified on page 5 of the September 2012 mailing, as a topic that will be discussed in the EIS. A stratified analysis would be desirable to speak to the variation in property and landowner attributes that would be encountered along the routes under consideration. 3. An analysis of the possible impacts of pipeline construction and operation on property owners' ability to obtain and maintain insurance policies such as homeowners insurance should also be included in the EIS in the area of socioeconomic impact. Landowners who have never dealt with this scenario before are unsure if they will be able to obtain such insurance policies and at what cost difference, if any, compared to their current no pipeline situation. Finally, as an avid fisherman, I would like to point out that recreational fishing opportunities abound within the portions of New York that may be affected by pipeline construction and operation. The EIS should address the individual and cumulative environmental impacts to the bodies of fresh water that would be crossed by the various alternative routes. These impacts should be assessed based on construction techniques that are under consideration. For example, would impacts differ if an open trench concept is used to cross bodies of water as compared to installation underneath the water via drilling in a horizontal direction? The removal of riparian vegetation due to clear-cutting the construction corridor and associated sedimentation are key elements of this assessment that need to be thoroughly studied and objectively reported. Thank
you. William Turek.
William Turek, T-U-R-I-C-K. I'm a resident of East Meredith and have most of my properties in Davenport. I'd like to thank FERC for the opportunity to have an input into the EIS. I'm an affected landowner. We oppose the construction of the Constitution pipeline. The pipeline will run across 1,000 feet of our property and be about 300 feet from our house. Since there is no federal setback, it could be 15 feet from the house. We do have some issues we would like FERC to address. Issue number 1 is impacts from blasting in solid bedrock covered only by a thin layer of soil and affect our water supplies. General observation, there will be disruptions to the underground water channels since an open trench construction method is to be used. Pipeline can negatively impact the water supply and quality, rendering to landowners water unfit to drink. We would request from FERC to study the effects of blasting on disturbances to water channels and the bedrock foundation, increases in seismic activity resulting from the blasting operation. Issue number 2 is effect on flooding from trenching and clear cutting of forest along steep terrains. General observation is there is likely to be an increase in flooding because of the proposed 125 feet wide construction corridor. There are several areas along pipeline slopes that are greater than 30%. On our property, the pipeline will drop down 1/4 of a mile at more than 30%. There will be extensive deforestation with the removal of hundreds of thousands of trees that will wind up being cut down along this route. There will be an increase in erosion. There is a threat to the pipeline since it will not be buried deep enough in rock areas. We request FERC study the effects of surface disturbance on forest floor and steep terrain from the removal of topsoil, trees, brush, and rock walls, and increased flooding. How much of the soil cover on top of the pipeline is likely to wash away in a heavy rain, leaving the pipeline exposed and unprotected? Erosion problems and landslides. Impact on atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen before and after removal of trees and vegetation. Issue number 3, assessment of safety and spill management. General observation, there have been serious explosions on property damage and loss of life in this area. The Fed HUD program has a 400 feet minimum setback from gas pipelines. There is an 800-foot blast radius posing a risk to homeowners. The pipeline will be located less than 800 feet from houses, including mine, given that there is no federal setback. Sensing technology can remotely detect leaks within minutes, but it can take hours, even days, to manually shut down the structure. Pesticides can be used to maintain a permanent right-of-way easement. There will be a significant permanent decrease in property value due to safety risk and fear of safety risk. We requested the FERC study why the federal HUD has a 400-foot setback of its housing project before pipelines, and there's no federal setback at all for pipelines on private property. Leak detection. System used when pipeline crosses aquifers and rivers that are actually critically important to drinking water. Pipeline corrosion rates and its effect on long-term pipeline integrity. Emergency planning, response and cleanup measures. Banning of pesticides during maintenance of the permanent easement. Property values before and after pipeline development. Issue 4, assurance of proper inspection. General observation is unclear how the pipeline will be inspected during construction and which agency is responsible for the inspections. We request the FERC study what regulations will ensure that inspections are constant enough to ensure the safety of people. Issue 5, assessment of insurance coverage. General observations, nationwide insurance reported will not insure properties, pipelines, and fracking. There will be an increased trespassing by snowmobiles and ATVs on a 125-foot wide clear-cut construction corridor. We'd like the FERC to study the effects and ability of homeowners to maintain and renew their insurance coverage at current rates, not prohibitive rates. Possibility that homeowners must obtain pollution insurance coverage. Easement agreements which stipulate that Constitution will compensate the landowner for loss of insurance and/or an increase in insurance premiums. Insurance. In closing, Delaware County residents have been negatively affected and have not benefited one iota from the New York City watershed, which wiped out whole towns controlled by outside DEP regulations. The Marcy South power line, which gives us absolutely not 1 kilowatt of electricity, and now we have the Constitution pipeline, which I guarantee will not give us 1 drop of
Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. My name is William J. Roche, RCHE. I am a stakeholder and landowner at 1353 White Hill Road in Davenport, New York, which my wife and I have the privilege of owning 127 acres. Tonight I want to speak to the original line that was set down, to the issue and my concern that I'll speak about tonight, and I've already written on other issues and I will continue to do so. But tonight I would like to just speak for a second about the concept of safety, environment and safety. I've made my concerns available to, and both gentlemen are equally responsive and polite, and I made my response to Mr. Richard Bell, the Director of Emergency Services of Delaware County, Mr. Kevin Britton, Coordinator of the Office of Emergency Services for Otsego County, and I copied it to Mr. Tom Williams, representative of Williamson County. Traversing our property and ending at a tower on Tower Road, Davenport, New York, is a bundled cable where the engineer, when we first bought the property some 6 years ago, said to me, I asked him, not what I do for a living, could we move this? And he chuckled. And he said, do you know what is in that cable? And he indicated that the tower and the Verizon fiber optic cable serve Delaware and Otsego County Emergency Services, State Police, Ambulance, Verizon, AT&T, Motorola, T-Mobile, NICIC, local radio, and similar significant properties, that in the event of a natural gas rupture, and someone who wins the lottery all the time, they will be incinerated. These lines will be incinerated. It's a very powerful word. That line will be incinerated. Now, we're just talking about a line, but we're talking about the ability of Otsego County initially didn't think they were going to be affected. The concept of the word affected landowner, my property, a neighbor may not think that he or she is affected, but in fact, when I finish with this short scenario here, he and his home and his children are very much more affected, never mind nature. If that natural gas line were to rupture, that line would be incinerated. Given the present routing is well within the blast burn radius. A major threat beyond the actual blast area is the thermal radiation sustained from a continued burn in a heavily forested area of which we're in. That area is protected by a volunteer service. It's sort of ironic and sort of almost humorous that we're giving out $25,000 grants when if a blast occurred, $25,000 I don't think is going to do the job. In the most credible and worst case scenario, we would lose all our ability to communicate instantaneously. I mean, I prefer to consider this. The proposed route should fall into, I think, along certain segments of the route, especially the V coming up off of going into a high consequence area. The data on a 30-inch pipe operating at 800 psi with a future maximum psi of 1440 has a burn area of 525 feet academically. In the hospital I work at, in my research lab, we have a little sign that says, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data." Well, history is a part of data. So when we look at the 30-inch, and let's do apples and apples, when we look at the 30-inch line blast in Belton, Virginia, that was in 1975. The burn radius was actually 725 feet, at less than 800 psi, much less than the potential of this line. In actuality, the blast burn area was 75% greater than the data reported by the Gas Research Institute, data reported in Jackson, Louisiana. That was operating at 1,016 psi when it ruptured, and was reported to burn an area of 1,450 feet long and average 360 feet wide, with the furthest burn in the rupture reported at 950 feet wide. The blast burn radius was greater than 45% of the data presented by the Gas Research Institute. In Lancaster, Kentucky in 1986, the PSI was 990 and it burned an area that was reported to be 900 feet by 1,000 feet. 2 houses, 1 house trailer, and other structures were incinerated. There's that word. It's a very powerful word. We're not now just incinerating the communication line. Now we're going to incinerate houses, animals, and I think that's what you're asking for, is safety and environment. The explosion created an asymmetric crater of 167 feet long, 26 feet wide, and 40 feet deep, and through sections of pipe that were recovered 100 feet away from the blast and measured at 28 feet. It took 60 to 90 minutes to turn off the gas. 8 deaths, 38 residencies were incinerated. The fire comprised the water main. It compromised the water main, making it necessary for ordinary citizens to drag hoses 4,000 feet. This can go on and on. There are lists of 30-inch pipeline catastrophes. And I think that when you look at where, so let's get back to the line. The line here goes up about 15 feet in the air and then goes underground. So when the landsman came, he said, well, we'll just move the line. Okay, that was my initial proposal years ago, to move the line, and I got chucked about. Now, if it goes underground, now it goes underground into a transmission line, this line comes up the road, in Davenport, comes up the road, and it is supposedly now going to go under that line. So from what I'm understanding is, we're told that a propane blast goes this way and natural gas goes this way. So one way or another, that line should be considered. And we should consider where we're putting this pipe. My bottom line is, we should consider where we're putting this pipe in relationship to people's lives, our forests, our animals, and I hope that you sincerely take that into consideration. I also would like you to take into consideration that in the proposal of M, that when it transverses behind the Nature Conservancy, there is a huge Nature Conservancy there. And the initial proposed line, if you come off that bank and the erosion will go into that bog, there is no question about it. They've stopped using fertilizers in that area. And then there are beautiful, beautiful waterfalls in the back of our property, in the back of the conservatory. There are natural springs that feed from one element into the other. And I would like for you to consider that water empties down into Oneonta on a beautiful sunny day in the fall, and you sit there. My wife and I found it for the very first time as a little dot on the map, and you could hear it from a half a mile away. And when you get there, it's awe-inspiring to see this water just gushing down the mountain, and to know that in M, it's going to traverse that area. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Timothy Cannon, C-A-M-A-N-N. I'm a landowner in the town of Sydney, Delaware County, and I have about half a mile of proposed route on my land. I'm opposed to the pipeline. I request that FERC order the Constitution Pipeline to add to their response to the August 9th request regarding estimating the facilities and costs necessary to achieve the project objectives of the route, or if the route were to be co-located along one of the above pipelines. There were two problems that I had with that. One is FERC's request to the pipeline only asked them to consider any one, and there's a network of pipelines that would allow the gas to get from Schoharie County to the New England markets. And rather than just considering one, I would like them to consider a network and using as many of them as possible. And secondly, the pipeline's project objectives are to get the gas to Schoharie County. There's no need for the gas in Schoharie County. That's where a junction of other pipelines is. But the gas is not going to be stored in Schoharie County. It's not going to be consumed in Schoharie County. It's not going to be released if things go right. It's going to be moved elsewhere. And rather than trying to get the gas from Susquehanna up to Schoharie County and then spread out, why not move it from Susquehanna either down into the Metro New York area through the Millennium or the Tennessee line, and then tie it to the reorder, that with two changes, that not necessarily the objectives of getting it to Harry, but getting it to the ultimate markets, whether that's in New England or overseas, and also that they consider using the network, not just one at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Warden. James Warden.
My name is James Warden, W-O-R-D-E-N. I am the president of the Windsor-Colesville Gas Coalition. And I also am representing and working with a group of landowners in dealing with Constitution Pipeline. We appreciate you having the first meetings and all the first process. It is a very intricate process and it has many stages. However, we are asking for an extension of the October 9th deadline. We feel an extension would not hurt that process. You can still move forward with the other processes of this system. But we do need more time for us to organize and submit our proposals to FERC. We understand FERC is very appreciative of landowner concerns, and we thank you for that. One of the main reasons we are asking for is the extension for is because a lot of the things that were supposed to happen in early July, we met the county office building with the Constitution Pipeline, and they had promised all the towns were going to have maps, all the people were going to have maps so that everybody knew where it was, and also line M was not in play at that time. To this date, many of the towns still have not received the maps. So this is really a very short window for us to comment, work on proposals, and provide the necessary documents and necessary information for FERC to make the final decision on allowing or not allowing where this pipeline goes. Thank you.
Claire Berger. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Claire Berger. Chris Denton.
Good evening. Let me, first of all, my name is Christopher Detman. I represent a number of landowners along the pipeline, in fact, along several different routes. Let me second the remarks of Jim Warden. We very much appreciate you holding a local meeting. It's very important. None of us could be able to go to Washington. And it does give us an opportunity to inform you of the unique local circumstances that we have. Also, let me second the remarks of Mr. Wood concerning the very narrow window before this committee closes, including the fact that maps were not delivered to the towns or to many of the landowners, so they were unable to come prepared. Like on appellate division, people like the hot bench want to be there and ready, and they couldn't prepare for this meeting. So we think that the October 9th, which is really only 7 business days, really is too short a period wish to close, we would recommend at least November up to December 1st would be appropriate. And as Mr. Warden said, the things which can run with this at the same time concurrently can continue to go ahead. My concern, although I do represent landowners and I do oil and gas work, I also represent clients in bankruptcy. I've been a real estate attorney for over 35 years and have been a title agent for over 30. I am steeped in real property law and bankruptcy law, and one of the continuing problems that has occurred is bankruptcy and the fact that the companies are not contending with fee interest, but an easement. Now, an easement can be returned at any time. It can be surrendered as a matter of law. Now, whether you allow that is an interesting note, but in bankruptcy, if the pipeline company should file bankruptcy, the bankruptcy trustee who takes possession of the assets of the pipeline company is not going to run a defunct pipeline. They're either going to sell it, there's no market for it, they're going to abandon it in place. It's a 30-inch pipeline. 30-inch pipeline abandoned in place will begin to rust immediately. Once you take all the cathode tubes off it, all the things that prevent rust, the maintenance stops. And a 30-inch pipeline, once it rusts, once there are holes in it, groundwater, of which there is a lot in this area, will run into it, and it will become an underground conduit. You either will put water to an area that it shouldn't go to, or it will fill up the pipeline and accelerate the rusting corrosive process. Eventually, the roof of that pipeline will collapse. When that happens, we'll have a 30-inch subsidence in the soil. And now we'll have a gully. Whether it's in the middle of a farm field, whether it's on traversing the slope, or directly downslope. And a 30-inch gully will produce an extraordinary amount of accumulated runoff very quickly. And the farmer, the landowner who has that, will have an extraordinary environmental erosion problem, as well as a silting problem in the creeks that I run into. Now, the current process does not address what happens if the company goes bankrupt, or simply says, we're tired of this project. Or sustainable energy actually takes over the world and they don't need the pipeline. Something like that happens. The landowner will be stuck with this issue and without compensation. The current methodology for eminent domain on an easement is the landowner is paid eminent domain in New York State on either a across-the-fence methodology or paired sales, which basically means what was the value of the land before the easement went in and what is the value after. Well, for farmland, which may run $1,000 an acre, and for which afterwards it's perfectly usable as farmland, there may be almost no difference. So the company has taken economic benefit without effectively paying for it. And in fact, we have lost several cases where New York State has held 40-foot wide easement, 1,000 feet long, is less than an acre. And if the property is worth $1,000 an acre, $900 for this easement. Now just add that up right along the 121 miles, and this is practically grand theft. Not only that, it's inconsistent with the way the industry actually negotiates things. I've negotiated pipeline easements for over 12 years. Every time we've had a gathering for which there is no right of eminent domain, the company has been very reasonable. We get a very strong easement protecting the individual landowner, usually about 6 or 8 pages long, including indemnity agreements, insurance, restoration, attorney's fees if we have to sue without them getting theirs, baseline testing, water, soil, air, before, during, and after, compensation package, and in some cases, 1 9-mile pipeline, for which Mr. Warden was involved,
we actually limited the easement to 40 years. 20-year easement with a 20-year renewal. Now, this has an environmental impact because if you make it perpetual, then there is no idea or no contemplated return of this property to its former state. And if you make it limited, as BLM, that's Bureau of Land Management, and the Indian tribes throughout West, where there is no sovereign immunity, there's sovereign immunity and there's no eminent domain, they're basically 10-year rental agreements with renewals with a renegotiation based on appraisals for the next 10 years. So what I'm getting at is that the fact that the pipeline can be abandoned in place as a matter of law by bankruptcy is an extremely important environmental issue which needs to be addressed in the environmental impact statement. If it is not, then the landowner will be left at some time in the future with either having basically a pipe dump site for which he or she is responsible, or if they are compensated, they should be compensated for the current value of removal of that pipeline and the restoration of the land under current rates, not future rate, current rate. Now, the landowner could then bank that so it would be there at the time when they have to use it to take it out. Having a bond isn't going to last for 50 years, and it's not going to last for 40 years. And bonds can be gotten rid of in a Chapter 11 proceeding. That I'm aware of. So putting in elements that, quote, ensure against this happening doesn't help. This board, commissioners, have in a recent storage facility, gas storage facility certificate in Steuben County, required the company to reimburse the landowners for the gas trapped in a Marcellus formation, which they could not drill because it was the cap rock. It was in the order requiring them to pay them in compensation for that loss of gas. All we ask is that the landowners to be paid for the cost of removal of that pipe up front and the cost of restoration. Thank you very much.
Our goal is to get through everyone on the speakers list, so if you would, please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. It would help the speakers behind you to make sure we cover everyone by the 10 o'clock hour. And also, please keep in mind that your written comments weigh just the same as your verbal comments. We will read all of them, so it doesn't matter whether you say it at the microphone tonight or put it in writing. They will always be considered equally.
Anne Marie Gardner.
Good evening. I want to thank you for your prior responsiveness to comments that have been made through this process. And I want to encourage you to continue that responsiveness. And the first step you can take has been mentioned this evening, but I want to emphasize it. And it goes to an issue of basic human fairness. Some people in this room, along the proposed pipeline, were notified in May or June, and they received information at open houses that were held in July. Other people were notified less than 2 weeks ago, and the open houses were held less than 2 weeks ago. They're at a distinct disadvantage. Some of them have spoken about that tonight. But FERC's response seems to be that, well, they have until October 9th, and we continue to take comments. But in fact, you don't continue to take comments about the scoping after October 9th, according to your own literature and your notice of intent. This is really very unfair when you consider what you're going to do. And I believe it is also unconstitutional. You are proposing to take people's land. You're proposing to take their future away from them. You're proposing to take their very dreams from them. And according to the Fifth Amendment, in order to do that, two things have to happen. There has to be due process, and there has to be a public meeting. I don't think you have either in this case. You don't have due process because some people have had months of notice, and other people have had less than 2 weeks of notice. You also don't have due process because you chose to have 3 hearings. The sites of those hearings were at the, 2 of the sites were at the extreme ends of 120-mile pipeline. The 3rd site is not in the middle of a 120-mile pipeline. It's within about 1/3 of the southern end of it. And anybody who can look at a map can see that it's not in the middle. And the judge will see that very clearly, very clearly. You know from the comments that you have received that most of the people who are opposed to this pipeline live in Delaware County. You know that 43 miles of this pipeline go through Delaware County. And that the border of Delaware County and Otsego County, which is now affected directly by Alternative M, has no border. So you can hand us a due process claim, or you can rectify something you've done wrong. You can give more time to the people who were just notified, an equal amount of time as the other people got, and you can hold hearings where you have clearly avoided. So that's the first part of the Fifth Amendment, due process. The second part has to do with need. That part is more difficult to do in a few minutes, and I have addressed some of that in my comments before. But the basic need for this project has to do with Lillian's bottom line and the interest of Cabot to frack in New York State. Yes. Now, Lillian also has an interest in fracking in New York State because they do ghetto lines. So, while FERC will try to say that it has nothing to do with fracking, this pipeline has everything to do with fracking. That's the only reason why it's coming through this area of New York State, which has both Marcellus Shale and Utica Shale, and which is not within a convenient distance to a gas transmission line when they permit hydrofracking in New York State. Now, I'm sure you're aware that in New York State there's a supplemental generic environmental impact statement wending its way through the state's environmental process. And that there's talk of a final this year, but who knows? And that EIS recommends a green completion. And that the EPA has issued regulations that require green completion starting in 2015. Now, a green completion means that in order to drill a gas well, you have to connect to the pipeline first. So this pipeline will enable hydrofracking because companies will drill close to the pipeline first in order to assess their holdings. You'll have to address those things, and you'll have to address the greenhouse gas emission results results and the industrialization results, the come from people either putting gas into the pipeline or taking gas out of the pipeline. You may not want to address all of those concerns, but you will have to address all of those concerns. You'll also have to address whether there is an actual public need for this project if you were to take the hydrofracking out of the equation. As other people have said, the destination of this gas is not Schoharie County. Yet when you asked Williams and Cabot to study the alternative pipeline routes, which was very responsive of her, and I was really pleased when you did that, their response was really a joke. Because what they did was started constructing $3 billion pipelines to end up in Schoharie County, New York, where they want to send their gas is to New York City or Boston. So they were going like hundreds of miles out of the way to get to Schoharie County. They would go from Pennsylvania east and then go up to Schoharie County when their destination is New York City. Why? Yes, why? Is anybody looking at that? Did anybody ask them, listen, this doesn't make any sense? I mean, I looked at it and started laughing.
Right. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
So, what is the real purpose of this project? The real purpose of this project is to increase the profits of some companies. There is no need for gas in New York City or Boston right now. There is no consumer demand that is not being met. There is an oversupply of gas. And these companies need to move that gas because they're losing money. And the only way they're going to start making money is if they start exporting it so that they can raise the price of gas. Certifies this project. What they're doing is they're taking people's land, they're taking people's future, they're taking people's dreams in order to enrich private interests. And something that has never happened before is you would certify this for domestic use, and then the DOE would come in and approve an export facility, and then the gas line, which was approved for domestic use, public need, would go to another country. And there is a very big question whether that is constitutional.
Thank you.
Linda Bevilacqua.
Needless to say, there is no money in farming, so my husband was forced to go back to New York City and commute for the next 17 years to provide income for our family. I stayed behind here with our 4 children, raising them alone. We then started a small beef farm, which I ran with the help of my children and weekend help from my husband. We made many sacrifices to have a healthier lifestyle for our children. We had a barn fire 8 years ago, losing our whole barn and the machinery and equipment with it. We did not have adequate insurance and suffered a huge financial loss. We decided to stay and rebuild our barn, and we replaced all of our machinery. We did this because we love our peaceful, serene, rural environment. Allowing the Constitution pipeline here will immensely disrupt our tranquil lifestyle with a constant generation noise and air pollution. We know the pipeline will ultimately lead to bringing in fracking. My husband and I have done extensive research on this subject and have been to Montrose, Pennsylvania numerous times. We have seen the destruction of the rural landscape there. We have not seen any economic gains and have noticed that most, if not all, of the workers are from out of state, thus not employing the local population. We have been to Brooklyn, Pennsylvania, where there is a 54-acre site which we believe is the beginning of the future Constitution pipeline. This facility is presently being constructed even though the air quality permit and the work permit have not yet been obtained. Why is this construction not being halted immediately?
It's unpermitted.
Please keep this monster constitutional pipeline out of rural upstate New York. There are plenty of existing pipelines which could be utilized to carry the gas. We know Williams is being deceitful by telling FERC it will be going to New York City and Boston, while telling their stockholders the gas will be liquefied and sent overseas, where they'll realize gains at least 5 times more than in the U.S. We are very worried about potential gas explosions, leaks, noise, air pollution, and ultimately water contamination. I hereby request that FERC study the cumulative impacts of future hydrofracking in New York State prior to permitting any further pipeline activities. Thank you.
Efrania Belalacqua.
Efrania Belalacqua, E-P-I-F-A-N-I-O, Belalacqua, B-E-V-I-L-A-C-Q-U-A. The last name means Belalacqua means drink water, drink the water. So we don't need to destroy the water. Okay, I'm going to get started. Dear Mrs. and Mrs. FERC, I can't believe that FERC, DEC, and oil and gas companies, politicians are getting away with hydro piping, destroying people's lives, killing people, and no regard to anything by allowing hydrofracking and pipelines being permitted in New York State. This has to stop now. I feel these activists should be criminalized. Exactly. Not permitted anywhere. We instead need to find alternative recyclable energy instead of spending money foolishly for natural gas and permitting pipelines that we don't need. People sacrifice to keep their homes. You destroy their homes, destroy their lives. How could you even do this? They should be locking everybody up. Politicians. They should be and Tom West, they should lock up for doing this. He's criminal. But instead, we just keep on putting everybody off and just let them do whatever they want. Where's democracy in this country? We need to change things now. So FERC needs to study. There is no need for the Constitution Pipeline project. There's already plenty of existing pipelines, places which could accommodate gas. This is high-risk flood areas. Two major devastating floods in 2006 and 2011. We don't need further problems that would increase in allowing construction of Constitution Pipeline. Please privatize the well-being of all working people and citizens of New York State.
And I'm here to represent the Delaware Otsego chapter of the National Audubon Society. And before I start, I just want to say that our position in terms of hydrofracking is that we don't support that technology. We believe that it's an unnecessary, polluting, invasive technology that has been put in place for the sake of corporate profit. And this pipeline is facilitating that. We believe the construction, maintenance, and other activities associated with the proposed pipeline on the preferred and/or alternative routes will have an irreversible negative impact upon deciduous and mixed forests, wetlands, bogs, marshes, rivers, streams, and woodland ponds, also known as vernal pools, considered the coral reefs of the northeast forests. These habitats are the breeding and feeding grounds for numerous species of birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, insects, and a number of other species, of which some are endangered, threatened, or in significant decline. A number of these habitats are considered too small for state and federal protection. Additionally, due to outdated maps, sensitive areas of concern are not addressed. Therefore, the Delaware Otsego Audubon Society is requesting that comprehensive studies take place and data collected on the following habitats and species: streams, ponds, and woodland vernal pools that occur from the seasonal changes, classification of wetlands, bogs, and marshes, in particular, the woodland vernal pools that are considered to be a vital part of healthy forest food webs. Migratory and resident birds, feeding, breeding, nesting, and fledging cycles. Particular attention paid to the declining species of warblers, wood thrushes, and their habitats. Bootios, falcons, accipiters, hawks, and eagles should be included in the survey. Owls, feeding, breeding, and their nesting cycles. Indiana bat, highly endangered due to white nose syndrome, identification of the few remaining habitats and their breeding cycles. Amphibians and reptiles, spring and fall surveys of threatened, high concern, and declining species. Plants, indigenous species such as orchids, pitcher plants, endangered, highly threatened, and of special concern. Insects, in particular, diversity necessary for healthy food webs. Mammals, identification of species and habitat, breeding cycles should be included. In all inventories, keystone species should be identified to ensure healthy food webs. We recommend using the following resources due to the lack of current accurate state and federal maps, information and regulations that fail to cover small rural areas such as ours, and the lack of adequate numbers of qualified staff at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The local chapter of the National Audubon Society and the New York State chapter, the Atlantic chapter of the Sierra Club, Cornell Ornithology Lab, Harvard College Biology Department, SUNY Oneonta Biology Department, Paul Smith College of Forestry, SUNY ESF, and the New York Flora Association. We request they do a threatened, endangered, and declining species inventory of the proposed areas, as well as a habitat needs assessment for these species. These organizations have the expertise and are committed to a sustainable Catskill environment. Thank you.
Catherine O'Donnell.
Good evening. My name is Catherine O'Donnell, 503 State Highway 28, Oneonta, New York. I live on Franklin Mountain Road, and I am a professor of sociology at Harvard College. I have sent previous comments to FERC, and I underscore their importance. I oppose the industrialization of upstate New York hydrofracking and pipeline. As a property owner living by the proposed Route M in Otsego County, I do not relish the potential devaluation of my primary investment, my home. I would like FERC to statistically analyze the impact of pipeline construction, installation, maintenance, and continuance on housing value, insurance, and sales for the entire 121-mile route. Furthermore, I would like FERC to statistically investigate the impact of future fracking on housing value, insurance rates, and sales along the 120-mile proposed corridor. I would like FERC to statistically analyze the impact of fracking and pipeline construction, installation, maintenance, and continuance on tax base, revenue, and community budgets in areas where fracking and pipeline development have occurred and where they are projected to be in this part of upstate New York. With respect to environmental impact, I have concerns regarding potential flooding. In spring 2011, I experienced flooding at my house on Franklin Mountain. The New York State Highway Department had just completed construction along the route, and the construction had involved tree removal. The proposed M route is on the same mountain that was destabilized during the flooding of May 2011. Finally, Franklin Mountain is a major U.S. raptor flight corridor. This includes the American eagle. Therefore, I have grave concerns. Thank you.
Clark Rose. Not sure if I'm saying that last name correctly. Clark, looks like Rose. Mike German.
Good evening. My name is Mike German. I'm here representing Leatherstock and Gas, a new gas utility that intends to provide gas distribution service in the southern tier of New York and the northern tier of Pennsylvania. Leatherstocking has acquired 6 gas franchises from local communities in New York State. These franchises are in proximity to the proposed Constitution pipeline, and Leatherstocking is in the process of acquiring 13 additional franchises in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. Leatherstocking intends to interconnect the Constitution pipeline in both New York and Pennsylvania. Leatherstocking has signed a memorandum of understanding with Constitution relative to working together to facilitate attaching communities along the route. Without Constitution pipeline, a number of these current communities, currently without natural gas, would have little prospect of getting gas service. In acquiring our franchises, we have dealt with a number of municipal officials and large customers. Leatherstocking has become aware of the economic hardships the lack of gas service imposes on local economies, citizens, and businesses. We have held at least 24 meetings with local government officials and business leaders. From these meetings, we have concluded there is a real economic need for the Constitution pipeline. Without natural gas, a number of these communities would remain economically imperiled. The Constitution Pipeline Group has indicated to us, including signing the previously mentioned Memorandum of Understanding, that they want to work with Leatherstocking to facilitate local gas service. Now, Leatherstocking's parent, Corning Natural Gas, has been directly connected to interstate pipelines for natural gas supply since 1904. And for you at the FERC, I believe the Federal Power Commission came into being in the mid-30s, so they were interstate pipelines, but they weren't regulated because you guys didn't exist. During that period of over 100 years, serving a 700 square mile region, that's Corning Natural Gas, we have never experienced an interstate pipeline failure that has resulted in harm to the environment, interruption of gas service, personal injury to customers or residents, or damage to property. That is since 1904. In conclusion, we believe there is a demonstrated need for natural gas service along the Constitution pipeline route, that without Constitution, these communities are unlikely to get gas service, and Constitution appears to be ready to satisfy these communities' needs. Thank you for the opportunity to present these comments. Thank you.
Thank you.